All right, so today we're going to dive into the government shutdown, take a look at how this may affect markets, especially the crypto markets, and of course break down a few charts for you guys at the end. You make sure and stick around for all this good stuff. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. All right, before we get started today, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at long-term holding, make sure and jump over to iTrust Capital. You can do everything from Bitcoin, Ethereum, a handful of altcoins, but you can also get into gold and silver. All of that is available into your own IRA account, self-directed. All you have to do is click our link down below. It's going to give you a $100 funding reward, and you can go on your journey of setting up your IRA. And it's almost that time of year. We're starting to get into tax planning and all those kind of things. Always consult your CPAs and or your tax advisors for the best advice out there, but check it out. All right, let's get into a few things. Now, I want to get into the government shutdown first. I've got a couple of clips we'll play for you. We'll get into some charts a little bit later for you as well. I want to go to this first clip, though. This gives you kind of a rundown of what's happening.
Here's a refresher. First off, Congress needs to pass 12 appropriation bills annually to give government agencies a budget for the coming fiscal year. If some of those bills pass, but others don't by the deadline, the government enters a partial shutdown. If all 12 appropriations bills aren't passed, the country goes into a full shutdown.
Congress has only a handful of working days left to keep the government funded. Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he's willing to keep the House in session on Friday and Saturday if a deal hasn't been reached to avert a government shutdown. However, both of the sides, the House and the Senate, will be off the following Monday in observance of Yom Kippur.
Continue to jam House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who's been trying and failing to pass bills to keep the government open, with Republican votes only.
Do you believe the government is going to shut down?
Yes, and it's Kevin McCarthy's fault. Kevin broke this deal, and I intend to hold him to that deal or to hold daily votes on a motion to vacate.
Some members warn an October 1st federal shutdown is increasingly likely, which could rattle the stock market and Americans' 401ks. The 750,000-member American Federation of Government Employees has warned members to save up whatever money they can.
This isn't happening in a vacuum. It happens when we have a spreading strike of UAW workers, and we have a lot of people who are being asked to start paying student loans. So we could be hitting the economy with three things put together could begin to have a punch.
I mean, are we already at more than 50% odds of a shutdown?
Well, I think so. I think it's more likely than not.
It's possible if there is a government shutdown and it lasts through the next meeting, then it's possible we wouldn't be getting some of the data that we would ordinarily get, and we would just have to deal with that. And I don't know. It's hard for me to say in advance how that would affect that meeting. It would depend on all kinds of factors that I don't know about now, but it's certainly a reality that's a possibility.
So I think the scenario plays out here. How does this affect crypto markets? How does this look for the forecast of traditional markets? Some of the things that, when you look at the full shutdown, I mean, there's a lot affected here. Obviously, the military gets 2 million U.S. military personnel would remain at their posts. So you have that. Law enforcement also gets hit because this would be a significant shutdown. Transportation is the one I think that would be very interesting because this is going to get into air traffic control, things of that nature, foreign affairs, all the U.S. embassies, national parks, etc. But the one that's interesting right here is when we get into the financial regulation right here, the SEC. So the SEC would essentially furlough around 90% of its 4,600 employees and suspend most activities. I guess that's good for some, but it also could slow things down across the bar in terms of the cases that are currently active. Obviously, the one with Coinbase also could get into regulatory slowdown with things around what's happening with the FIT bill in Congress. A lot of this could really slow the nation down as a whole. The bigger impact is how do the financial markets respond? And I think that's the thing we have to really concern ourselves with. We'll take a look at some of the charts in here. Further into this is, are we likely to have another one? This is the thing I'm interested in, because most likely this is going to get to a point where they get some sort of deal made. And most likely we will see the shutdown. Whether that's a few days or a week, maybe as much as 10 days, that would be catastrophic, I think, if we got beyond a week or 10 days. But really, what is the next one? I think that's the one that we have to really concern ourselves with, because right now we're still at a stage going into as they mentioned on that clip earlier, a potential UAW strike, which would be massive in terms of the economy. And then we still have all of these trailing data points that Chair Powell mentioned in terms of just jobs, what we're going to see with inflation. And remember, all of that's coming together at one time. So that's the thing I'm most worried about. I want to go to another clip real quick. And this is going to get into Gensler talking about if the government gets shut down. Listen to what he had to say.
You've spoken a bit about the impact that would have on the SEC from an operations standpoint if people are furloughed, limit the ability of the agency to do its work. But knowing that during the debt ceiling fight, you talked a lot about the potential significant financial market ramifications of a default. Is there anything significant about a government shutdown that financial markets should be worried about?
I would say first, the market regulators, the public should understand, we will largely be a skeletal staff under the laws. And so the normal oversight we have on markets will not be possible. It just simply is not. For how many days that happens. Companies that want to go public may not find that their filings could even be reviewed by the SEC and the like during pendency of a shutdown.
But you don't anticipate significant events could emanate from the government shutting down potentially for a prolonged period of time that would be disruptive to the actual activity?
Importantly, the Treasury markets will still function. There'll be trading in the stock markets. You just won't have the oversight of the market regulators.
He seems really nervous here in this scenario if a government shutdown does occur. I mean, yes, this will slow things down. Are there certain things I wonder that the SEC is right on the brink of in terms of litigation or other things that could maybe slow things down for them as a whole? Obviously, it will slow them down, but to maybe at a point where there could be some very critical elements that kind of play into this. The other thing that, of course, we covered this week was the Chair Powell's Fed meeting, what the FOMC means to the markets, and also what's happened after that meeting. Because I think this is what it boils down to, is that with Chair Powell's remarks, we got a very good indicator, and I think the market finally responded. And that is that this is going to be much higher for much longer, or higher, I should say, for much longer than anticipated. And many analysts now are looking at this potentially as saying, we could see this going into multi-year, meaning 25, 26, possibly 2027 before we truly see any kind of full correction into the market. Likelihood of higher interest rates at these rates that we're experiencing right now are going to be significantly longer. And I think now the market is starting to respond to that. I'll show you some things within the charts themselves. Another topic that was interesting, I thought, right here was just the interest rates and what this might be for people who are saying, okay, well, how can I take advantage of this? Right now, it's still the money markets. Money markets are paying better than anything. If you're in that 5%, nominal range of that's all the risk I want to take, if I'm looking at maybe going into some markets and playing the volatility game, then the blockchain markets and crypto markets may be some of the better bets. And I'll show you some things that kind of point to that. But I'd love to get your feedback. Do you think the markets are going to continue to put pressure on not only the traditional finance markets, but do you feel like there's going to be any response in the crypto markets as well? Make sure and drop some comments down below. Smash the like if you, of course, are not a subscriber, and maybe this is the first time that you've come to our show. Make sure and subscribe now. When we get into some of the charts, we break down some things that we call sentiment. And sentiment is kind of driven off of two factors. And there's some interesting things happening right now. I'll show you a good example. This is just a split right here on the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. And as you can see, obviously the S&P 500, these are on the 4 hours. So this is the fall off that we've seen, almost 5% from its high there over the last couple of weeks, down to where it's trading right now, the S&P at around 4350. Bitcoin, of course, has had a little bit of a soft push upward, now trading at around 26.6 after it had that almost 27 range right there. But this is kind of that range of volatility that we've been talking about, but it is an upward volatility. I'll go to just the Bitcoin chart itself. And let me scan up here, jump to the Bitcoin chart for you guys. You can kind of see this range playing out a little bit more. And when you look at sentiment overall, and this is something that obviously we track significantly with the MSI, which by the way, our name of the Crypto Power Index has now been shifted to the Market Sentiment Index, which is a brand new format. It's got a lot of new features there. In fact, I will show you a little bit more about this. So the new features that you guys can track now is the home, of course, is going to give you overall blockchain top 10. And then we get into altcoins and Web3 all combined into one. And then TradFi, this is the new one. So if you take a look at what's happening here on TradFi, what we've done is showed 3 different variations here. One, let me zoom in on that for you guys just a little bit. There we go. What we've done here is we show the overall crypto sentiment right there. That's the overall market, including all tokens. Then you get into the TradFi sentiment. There you can see the downward trend, amplification of the TradFi market, also on a heavy downward trend right now, and then where Bitcoin is holding. And now these don't really compare sentiment to sentiment. They're different, but the point is that you can get the trend lines going here within that. If we take a look at the top blockchain projects that we currently track, obviously these are the ones that you want to pay attention to: Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, XRP, and so on, all the way into Chainlink. But I'll go over here and look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is doing something that is very interesting right now to pay attention to. One is this right here, where we're getting this kind of somewhat solid trend upward right here, all the way back here to the 15th of September, where we had a little bit of this trend. And if you jump back to the chart, essentially that's about where we are starting to see this trend start to occur in holding. Now the question that we have is how this is going to be affected in the amplification, because amplification has been falling. This is the concern that I have right now with Bitcoin. Are we looking at possibly a correction, or are we simply going to be seeing that spread of amplification and top line sentiment to where we get a lot of sideways action? So that's something to be thinking about because it is possibly could go into one of those zones where we don't get much in the way of trading. Chainlink, of course, has been a little bit of the winner here. It finally clipped up. Let me show you a little bit here on Chainlink. Finally clipped up above where a altcoin is actually overperforming right here on the overall, and sentiment is starting to climb also with amplification sentiment with Chainlink. If you guys, I'd love to know what tokens that you're following, maybe on the top 10, if you look at, the ones that make sense to you guys, which ones of these, when you get into the top 10, are the most interesting to you? Drop some comments down below. I mean, we obviously track Solana and Avalanche pretty heavily. Cardano's in there just because of the market cap and the overall sentiment score of what we see in their community. And that's how we bring those top 10 in. You can still go over and get to the altcoin section, which will give you all of the other altcoins and Web3 tokens, gaming tokens, etc. that we cover. So you can get a full listing of all that. All right, so if you guys are not part of our Diamond Circle, make sure and get in. It's very simple and easy, and it's free. All you have to do is click the link down below. It'll get you involved in doing another podcast over there, some additional content, all that good stuff. And if you want to reach me out there on Twitter, it's @PaulBear. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBuy.